Hello, everyone. This is Greg, your host of Goddamn Gamecube, and this is Season 4. Follow Goddamn Gamecube on social for updates on the show, and subscribe to us on YouTube for bonus video content. Thank you, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Goddamn Gamecube. Greg and Riley are your hosts today, and today we're going to be talking about the PlayStation exclusive Spider-Man and Spider-Man Miles Morales. I wanted to start off today's episode with perhaps a little anecdote that our audiences may find endearing. We've talked about this on the show before and off mic, how my superhero and comic book knowledge is limited. And when it comes to Spider-Man, this game was actually my first exposure to Spider-Man content ever. So I didn't see any of the movies. I didn't read any of the comic books. The self-titled PS4 Spider-Man was my first foray into this universe at all. A positive bias I may have with this game is every reveal is new to me. Every villain reveal is exciting to me, or every surprise that fans have known about since the 70s, or I guess would be a surprise to me, but would not be a surprise to them. So, Riley, why don't you start it off? And I'll end this anecdote by saying, I didn't know that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. Yeah,
that's crazy to me.
Which is, I feel like that might be strange for an audience member to hear when you're listening to a gaming show, but
even
go ahead.
Through osmosis or something,
of course,
you'd think you'd have picked something up, but nevertheless. So yeah, this came out in 2018, an action-adventure game developed by Insomniac Games. I don't believe their first Spider-Man game. I think they've done a couple in the past, published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. Originally a PS4 exclusive and later ported to Windows, right? And it tells an original story inspired by comics lore and some other adaptations of Spider-Man. So just to kind of throw the line in the water here. So I think this is overall a good game, but I had more problems with it than I was expecting to.
See, I thought you would love this game.
Yeah,
so, maybe not.
I thought I would too.
Well, I shouldn't say love. Maybe that's too strong. If I was as high on it as I was, I thought you would be the same.
Yeah, and most of my problems do not come from knowing more about Spider-Man. Most of them are kind of, nitty-gritty details. So right off the bat, how did this game run for you?
So I played this on PlayStation 4, and I thought this game ran extremely well.
Yep. I tried to run it on PC. I don't know why I couldn't run it. I have a decent PC, but I couldn't run it. I thought it looked good on PS4 considering the time it came out.
Sure.
Except for the character's hair. I thought that looked weird.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I thought it ran very fluidly.
And I think, web slinging around the city runs way better than you would think.
More than you would think, especially, I think that it really, the whole traversal aspect is really what carries the game.
Yep.
I think the city looks great. I think it could look a little dirtier. Knowing what I do about New York, having spent some time in those streets, it's just not as cluttered as it could have been. It was very picturesque, especially at sunset. I liked a lot. I felt as though we talk a lot recently about games where they didn't really feel lived in, and I felt like the world did to an extent. You at least got frequently you would hear the character Jonah Jameson, who's Spider-Man's old boss. He has a podcast where he basically pretty much vents about Spider-Man. I felt like this game helped me understand him a little bit more as a character, where he embodies sort of this cynicism that is, I wouldn't say it pervades New York City or America in general, but it is a significant percentage where I feel like the cynicism is so extreme that they'll take ridiculous logical leaps to no one could be that nice,
right?
There has to be, Spider-Man has to have an ulterior motive for doing what he does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was okay. I get him a little bit more hearing him in this context, right? And you also get a look at Spider-Man's Twitter feed. And I think it's probably the most believable writing in the game. There's a lot of people who are trying to be funny and they're not funny, or like people who are fans of Jameson, or people who are making fun of Jameson. It made it feel like a little bit more alive than I have seen New York City portrayed in the past in games, right? So you're messing around as Spider-Man. They have pretty much, I think, every suit that I could possibly imagine from comics history. Which suit did you, or suits did you enjoy the look the most of?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe not in Miles Morales, but in Spider-Man, certain abilities are tied to certain suits.
Yeah, but you can change the look.
Yeah,
you
that's
can mix
right.
and match.
I think because keep in mind, Spider-Man was so new to me. I ran around in the standard hero suit.
Okay, because I hated that.
Really?
I did not like the look of it at all. I thought the white spider and the highlights were just not like too. It reminded me of like something like Dick's Sporting Goods or Sports Authority, like very athletic wear. And I just thought it was too. I like the classic suit, the red and blue and black spider. I'm just gonna go through some of my favorites if you don't mind. There's a cool the noir one where it's like it's Spider-Man reimagined in the 1930s, so it's very kind of low tech, him lurking around. There is what is it, the 2099, that's the future one. That's very cool. Miguel O'Hara, kind of an interesting take on the character there. Scarlet Spider is a plot line that I like and nobody else likes, and it's Spider-Man gets cloned. I think it was in the 80s or 90s. And his clone wears this really cool, it's pretty much just like a full red suit with like a blue vest. It's very like kind of throwback character design, which I like a lot. There is one I never thought I'd see, which is the Last Stand suit, which is there's a comic which portrays it's like pretty much at the end of Spider-Man's life, like how he's gonna go out, and it looks like that. It's just kind of a lot more. I think he's wearing jeans or something. It's very kind of streetwear.
Interesting.
And I'm not sure if you messed around with this one at all. The bombastic Bagman suit.
No, I didn't.
He briefly, I think he's in hiding or something. He joins the Fantastic Four, and so he just wears a Fantastic Four suit and wears a bag on his head, a paper bag. And all the movie suits look great, I thought.
Yeah.
Especially there was a lot of contention around. They for a long time didn't include the Tobey Maguire suit, and there was a lot of fans who like gave them shit online and everything. And it's like, and they eventually put it in the game, but it's like they were throwing such a hissy fit. It was so embarrassing. But ultimately, it came out great. It looks awesome. I really also like the cell shaded classic comic suit. I almost wish the entire game looked like that. I thought it came out looking great.
Do you want to hear a weird comment by my mom?
What?
You might appreciate this. So she happened to be walking by when I was playing, and she said, of course, she doesn't game at all.
Right.
She said, wow, this game looks so realistic, except for the people in their eyes. I was like, huh.
That's where the humanity that holds a lot of games back.
The eyes.
It's all in the eyes. No, I thought that looked amazing. There was a game that came out, I think 2005 or 2006, called Ultimate Spider-Man, and was about that era of the comics, and it was all like that cell shaded kind of stuff. It looked great. I kind of wish they leaned into that for this, but very clean UI. I thought very intuitive menus. One tiny little thing I wish they had included was boss health bars. I always get pumped when I see a boss health bar.
Yeah. Because I feel like in games like this, you're kind of punching away until a cinematic happens. Right.
Yep. The sound I thought was great, but the music was pretty bland, pretty forgettable, at least in this one. I thought the voice acting was very solid across the board, especially Dr. Octavius and Jameson. One minor critique I had was that the Peter, I think Donkey made this joke, but Peter's little Bubsy quips get old really fast. Like you hear the same joke so many times. I'm like, I don't know, that's enough of that, right? And last but not least, on this section here, nice. I actually forgot that Stan Lee was still alive when this game came out.
When did he die?
He died, I think, 2019, and this was a year prior. So he shows up in the diner. He's the creator of Spider-Man. He's the old man. He serves him and Mary Jane. I was like, oh, fuck. He was still alive when this came out. That's awesome.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so it was nice to see him. So in terms of the way the game plays, all right, This game, a big gripe I have right up front. This game has an absurd amount of quick time events. For a game released in 2018, there's some going back to Resident Evil 4 and stuff. It's the era where this was way past the era.
Oh yeah. I mean, so many of these quests are solved by like mashing square or
And I remember when the Spider-Man 3 movie game came out, that was a huge complaint I had back then. I'm like, we got to get over this, man.
Yep.
We get no more quick time events. I feel like there's a lot of just kind of fluff or filler just to have it, and a quick time event is something like that. Like, well, we need to portray this, make this cutscene a little more interactive or something. I would rather it wasn't there. Kind of a prehensile system. Did you participate in any of the optional content?
So yes and no. I think it's hard to sort of wrap my thoughts around this. I think traversing around the city is so cute and charming that I forgave some of this game is very open world tropey and collectible.
Yeah.
Right? Finding all the backpacks and all of that stuff. So I did more side content than I thought I would.
Yeah.
But I think it's just because traversing the city is so fun.
Yeah.
But it's just in other games I would find it not as forgivable.
The traversal was as I think that was what kept the momentum happening, and literally and figuratively, in terms of, I thought the backpack stuff was like, at least you were getting some history, because this Spider-Man is way further into his career, so you get some of the backstory about his life and how things played out in this version. I thought a lot of them were really repetitive, like breaking up like the gang fights or whatever, or stopping. It's like,
well, this game it really plays like an open world Ubisoft game.
Yeah, but in terms of even the scripted side quests, I thought there would be more to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that was kind of a bummer for me. So there is sort of a side plot, which I wanted to bring up just at the top here. The Taskmaster character, he's kind of like similar to the Batman Arkham games, whereas like a Deathstroke or Deathshot or something, where he's just kind of testing you because he wants to. The Taskmaster character in general comics lore is he can copy anybody's moves just by observing, watching them and stuff. So he puts you up to these challenges so he can see how would Spider-Man handle this, etc., which is a good enough motivation. But these really sort of stress test how well the mechanics work, and I think some of them hold up to scrutiny and some don't. I think the traversal is obviously the strongest part.
Yeah.
Probably the best that Web Swing has ever felt in any Spider-Man game. The only competition is that Ultimate Spider-Man game I mentioned, as well as the Spider-Man 2 movie tie-in. Those are kind of like the gold standard, and I think this may have even surpassed them. Right. So jumping, swinging, web zipping, and wall running, I think all feel super smooth. They transition very well between each other. I actually, one little personal preference thing was that I turned off vibration.
Interesting.
Because I felt like every time I jumped off a roof or whatever, I was like, I want it to feel smoother. So I turned it off. It felt a little bit better to me. Two things which I felt were maybe could have used a little bit more tuning were the wall crawling and jumping backwards off a wall.
Yeah,
I had problems with that pretty consistently.
I always feel like when I go to crawl up a wall, I just start sprinting up it.
Yeah.
Right? Where I don't quite understand how to get Spider-Man to crawl. I feel like what you really had to do is aim at the wall and send yourself there to start the crawl. It feels kind of odd.
Yeah, I think it should have just started out as a crawl, and then you could run if you wanted to.
The Assassin's Creed thing, hold right trigger to run.
Yeah, it kind of does that, but you don't start out that way. So another cool aspect was the ability to take photos from atop skyscrapers. But a problem I had with this, you know me, I'm an amateur. I call myself an amateur photographer, right?
Yep.
The ability to climb a skyscraper and take a photo from that angle is so compelling to me. The thing that held it back to me was that when you want to take a photo, you have to kind of lock in on it, and the zoom will always fuck up your composition. Yeah. So he'll take a picture, it's like, it's beautiful. I'm like, no, it's not. It looked terrible. I don't know. That bothered me. I didn't really hate the little BioShock puzzles in the lab because it at least felt like an understandable aspect of the Peter Parker experience.
Right.
Not my favorite part of the game, but it didn't like annoy me.
It breaks up the action at least,
At
right?
least, yeah.
Yep.
And it is kind of funny that you can skip them completely.
Yeah.
Like you just like hold this button to skip. What did you think of the combat in this game?
So well, this is what I felt a natural continuation of the freeform combat in Batman is, right? Unless you disagree, the combat to me in this game, you're Spider-Man, you are faster and more agile than Batman, but it plays like Batman, and there's a little bit of that Prince of Persia diving, running, wall running, a little bit.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, so some kind of highlights here, or just at least important aspects of it. Good combat performance is rewarded with focus, which can it's just a meter that can be used to heal you or use it on instant takedowns. Somewhat similar to the Arkham combat you mentioned, but the dodge and counter indicator was a lot harder for me to see.
Oh,
at least in the
You
beginning.
mean like the white and red, like the Spidey sense
around his head. So the bullet time dodge that you can unlock kind of alleviates this a little bit. Like there's a little bit bigger of a window, or it turns it blue. Except for a couple times you get into this is the character Mr. Negative. When you run into him, like the colors change so much, and it totally like fucks up the visibility of this. What this creates for me, it's like a combat system where the only thing you're really watching is the aura around Spider-Man's head. If you want to have a good, like, consistent, you want to keep your combo going, you really just got to be watching around his head.
Yep.
And I think that's a limitation, like where I really should be able to get into the action, like look at the enemies, look at, his moves, look at what's going on, really taking it in. And it's like, if you want to have a good performance, like if something off screen can shoot you or throw something at you, if the camera isn't, locked on.
Do you feel like it's a lot of pressing square a lot and waiting for the thing around your head to happen?
Yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily mind that if it was clearer. It's just like, I felt like where my vision was guided was not optimal.
There are some collision issues where sometimes you can successfully dodge something, but the bullet runs into you anyway because you ran out of space.
Yes.
And so it feels a little odd.
Yep. And it just feels like it creates a divide between you and Spider-Man, where he would be able to dodge that no problem. Yep. And sometimes the camera will prohibit you from seeing anything at all.
Yep.
Sometimes the enemy will get stuck in a hard or impossible to reach place and still be able to hit you, and there goes your streak.
Yep.
Right? So what I think this game should have, what I think every third-person action game should have, is that fucking Zelda Souls lock-on camera.
Z targeting.
Gotta have it. Gotta have Z targeting. It's imperative.
Yep.
I think it would have helped with all of this.
This
stuff.
implied targeting it's not bad. It just doesn't always work out.
Yeah, it felt like, the Arkham games where they're kind of flirting with that system and kind of the pioneering it when it first came out. The first one came out in 2009. This was 2018. We should have learned from
right
by now. You know what I mean? So what gadgets did you use in combat, and which ones did you choose to upgrade? Which
so
there?
I don't know. Perhaps I'm just like a Spider-Man noob. Like I did this a lot where I would get someone on the ground and then spam web slinger to stick them there.
It was that and the impact web, where it does it instantly.
Yeah,
when it gets stuck there, that was the most satisfying. Like
I either like web sling someone and toss them into a wall, or got them on the ground and then did it.
Right.
Yep. That's just seemed like the strategy.
Yeah, definitely. I like that the web shooters have limited ammunition.
Yep.
They take some time to recharge. So I also liked the drone, the spider drone, and the trip mine, which if they cross over it automatically webs them. Electric web and web bomb didn't help me that much, and I didn't invest in the concussion blast or the suspension matrix at all. I was like, I'm perfectly happy with my normal web-based gadgets.
Your web-based gadgets.
My web-based gadgets. I am totally fine. I think if you maybe had some taking a cue from Arkham, some shortcuts with remember how in the Arkham games you had his grapple move if you held a left trigger and hit Y or triangle, it would auto do it.
It would quick grapple.
If you had something like that, I felt like it would have integrated the gadgets a little bit better.
Yep.
Instead of having to like open up the wheel every time if you wanted to use a different
Right.
one.
It felt like to me I was doing a lot of, well, the web slinger just has more ammo to use, or web shooter. So I'm
out of this. I gotta,
yep.
do the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you think of the stealth mechanics?
So I enjoyed the stealth in this game quite a bit.
Okay.
What I think is cool about this game, you kind of hit that middle ground between you can play this. I want to say this carefully. You can play this game in sort of this fashion. I'm going to stealth as best as I can, and then then if I get caught and I'm in the shit, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think it's a little bit, it's also a little bit more forgiving, but it does make the game more fluid and more fun.
Okay.
I tended to handle areas like I'm going to stealth the best I can, but when I get caught, let's just go do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So I'm going to have the opposite reaction to you.
Here we go.
I don't think they were a good idea at all, at least in this game.
Really?
I felt very exposed all the time, at least compared to Batman. That's kind of inevitable because Batman is more of a stealthy character. I felt like maybe like a crouch button or something would have been a more welcome inclusion.
Right, you kind of do the sneaky run the whole time.
I could never really. This is somewhat alleviated in the next game, but in terms of, I felt like it was a little too nebulous about being seen.
Yeah,
or how visible I was. Something else I didn't like was when you go after like the bases or some of the story missions too, you can only take out so many enemies with stealth. Like if you're having a perfect run, there will be a point where they just call it off and you're just caught.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why am I doing this? You may as well just go guns blazing every time.
Of course.
I don't know. And they send reinforcements. There is a suit mod where you can discourage reinforcements if you get caught, but this just doesn't work if you get to a certain point and they can come after you. So
did you not find the combat fun? I feel like maybe you lean more negatively than I do. I actually think it plays a little bit better than Batman in places.
No, I completely disagree.
Interesting.
I thought the swing and exploring was fine. The combat was really frustrating to
me.
Really? Yeah.
Wow, I didn't really find that at all.
I just it didn't feel as tight. I don't know. But while we're on stealth, something else about this game that I didn't like is the time you spend sneaking around as Mary Jane and Miles Morales.
Yeah, you didn't like this.
I didn't like it at all. I felt very divorced from the main experience to me. And I think they should have just been cut all together. You play as Mary Jane 5 times. You play as Miles, I think 2 or 3 times. Minimal interactivity during these, sneaking around, handful of like baby level puzzles. And I'm like, I want to get back to Spider-Man. We need to get back. This game is called Spider-Man.
Would you invoke intern Nick's quote? You could have emailed this.
This could have been an email, but I have 2 specific complaints from the story about these moments.
Sure.
At a certain point, Miles, he's, if you're unfamiliar, he's a newer character. He's sort of he's going to be the next Spider-Man, right? He's just an ordinary kid from Harlem, and he's kind of drawn into this story, I guess, as it goes on. At a certain point, you're playing as him, and this is further on in the story. He decides to stand up to some escaped prisoner. There's a prison escape at one point. Decides to stand up to them who are robbing someone on the street, right? And I was like, oh, they're finally going to. This is where you will fight people as Miles Morales, and it plays out in a cutscene. It's like,
right,
you really like this would have been the moment, to now he's becoming brave. He's like a teenager.
Sure.
This is where he starts to become Spider-Man, right? Plays out in a cutscene. Point 2. Later on, there is a moment where Mary Jane's Peter Parker's girlfriend. She is exploring, I think it's Norman Osborn's penthouse, looking for evidence or something, or some nonsense. And what happens is she, to escape the people that are pursuing her, she jumps off the building, right? I mean, the tone is in this moment is complete. There's no tension at all. It's like kind of played for fun, right? But if you played it either as her or Spider-Man, it would have been like kind of gripping,
right?
Like the point is that she has to put her faith in Spider-Man that he's going to catch her when she jumps off.
Right.
If you had to do that, it would be, as Mary Jane, it would at least have been like a leap of faith moment, like, oh shit. Or if you're playing as Spider-Man, you have to like really like, oh fuck, I have to catch
Time
her.
this up.
I think they've even done it in previous Spider-Man games where someone gets thrown off a
You have to do
building and you have to catch them. I felt like either of these, like, there's no need for these to be cutscene related. Like,
these don't need to be like baby cinematics.
Yeah,
right?
I felt like there was a lot of like little shortcuts narratively where this could have been integrated into the gameplay a little bit more. There is also the free aiming, which I thought it could have felt a lot more clunky than it was. I thought it was maybe not as implemented as much as it could have been.
Do you mean the free aiming of your gadgets, etc.?
Yeah, like aiming at, or webbing up somebody.
I don't use it that much.
Not much, because it's kind of like you have to stop what you're doing, and but it could have been worse. What's kind of skills on the tree did you feel were worth investing in?
Oh wow. I was very thorough with this game, so I unlocked most of everything.
Okay.
What did you like?
So yeah, I mentioned the perfect dodge.
Dodge
of course. Window.
Yep.
The payback where you, if you dodge perfectly, he'll web them.
Oh yeah, or like I think there's a specific one where if you perfect dodge a bullet attack, you will automatically down somebody.
Yeah.
That's probably. I typically invest in like Is it called the focus meter that can also heal you?
Yeah.
Like, I tend to invest in getting more healing per focus and automatically downing somebody through dodging.
Yeah, that the web throw, like you're throwing rockets back at people.
Yeah.
The double zip and the charge jump when you're on the ground. So anything that makes traversal like even better is always a priority for me. What kind of like suit powers did you prefer?
So I don't know how you tend to play games like this, but I always tend to go for numbers. Like whatever's gonna reduce damage to me, because I'm gonna get beat up. I'm gonna get beat up by bullets or punching. I went a lot of defense to do this.
Yeah, I pretty much I always went with the web blossom, where you jump up in the air and you shoot web at like a bunch of
Interesting.
people.
Okay.
I thought that was invaluable during a lot of encounters. I also liked the decoy, like the hologram thing.
Yep.
The spider buddy, the little thing, the drone that helps you. The electric punch, the iron arms, where you kind of get like the Dr. Octopus arms.
Right.
And the unrelenting fury, where you become unblockable.
Yep,
that's very valuable. So that's all I really have to say about the gameplay. You want to get into the story?
Yeah, I mean, before we start the story, I'm surprised that you didn't think this played as well as Batman, as well as Batman, because I definitely did. When it comes to the story, I mean, I said it in the beginning of the episode, but all the story beats in this game, or I may have a positive bias because I didn't know Doc Ock was bad until I had to play this game. Like, I just thought he was your mentor and the guy you worked for. I didn't know. I had no idea. So.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll get into it, but that aspect I have like mixed feelings about.
Sure.
Well, so how did you feel about the way that in the very beginning that the story established Peter Parker?
That's a great question. Well, that's almost a difficult question for me to answer.
Well, I can start if it gets you going.
You know what it is? For me, I don't know who Peter Parker is.
Right, but that's what I'm interested in, is how did he come off to you, I guess. Was
he
vanilla,
was
or?
Better voice acted than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Like when I played this for the first time, I thought I shouldn't do this, but I was ready to eye roll, because I'm not making fun of folks who like superheroes, but you have to really suspend your belief that this could happen.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm this kid is going to save New York City. Okay.
It could be campy. That's
a good word.
Like in the way that it's executed. Like I think those first two Tobey Maguire movies are really like the gold standard.
Sure.
In terms of how serious it is. And how much you're rooting for him.
Yeah.
And I think on some level I was in this game. So at the beginning of the story, Peter Parker, he's a college graduate and he's been Spider-Man for 8 years already. So he has already dealt with several of the supervillains. He worked at the Daily Bugle already and quit. J. Jonah Jameson is retired. He had a relationship with Mary Jane that fell apart, right? So in my opinion, this would make for an interesting new spin on the Spider-Man fable, but some things like he's working for Otto Octavius at the beginning. They have like a little startup in someone's garage or whatever, right? I would wager that, not to put you on the spot or anything, like 80% of people knew this man is Dr. Octopus, right?
I don't even know who that is.
Right. But in terms of if you're like a geeky guy who likes video games or whatever, you probably know a little bit about Spider-Man and his nemesis, right? I think that like if you're kind of taking a mulligan about Spider-Man and like doing a totally fresh take, like he's already so far into his career. I don't think any of the movies have shown him 8 years into his career before.
Okay.
So that was kind of fresh, but it just seemed weird to act like this was new.
Okay, I understand what you mean.
You know
what
what I
you're
mean?
saying, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So so I watched the movies after I played this.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is the Doc Ock controversy happens to Spider-Man very young in the movies, but in the game it happens way later.
Well, in terms of it's a ton of these characters have already been put in super jail. And Dr. Octopus is obviously, it's one of his biggest nemesis.
Yes.
And it's weird that I felt like some of this game was trying to do something new, especially with respect to Mr. Negative, who I'm not that familiar with.
Yep.
But Dr. Octopus, it's kind of like, I thought it was well handled, which we'll get into, but in terms of the premise, it's kind of like a retread.
I think what's really tough is for you, it's a retread. For me, all the surprises are new.
Right.
So I have no idea.
Yeah. So I mean, basically to sum it up, I think it's kind of reworking his character when he's already been done well in other media and leaves a lot of the supporting cast kind of out in the cold when they could have used more development and screen time. I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity considering how much more time you have in a game than a movie. It also defangs kind of the rogues gallery a little bit, where most of them have already been dealt with, and then when they kind of inevitably show up later, he kind of like just treats them like toddlers throwing a tantrum. And it's like, I would like to take this a little bit more seriously than I have to, right?
Yep.
So kind of goes for the intro where you take down the Kingpin as well. He's frequently portrayed as sort of like he doesn't have any powers. He's just a big guy who runs like
big
the
bulky
mob,
dude,
right? And he's sort of portrayed as like a mastermind type figure in Spider-Man. And when this happened, so I'm so surprised that you thought this combat was fluid, because I felt very weak and gangly in the beginning.
Okay. I mean, I thought this boss battle was hard.
Yeah, I was like, I felt like the first fight really to get you in Spider-Man's shoes should have been a breeze, like, and then you kind of build it up over time. And I was like, why am I'm on the normal difficulty? Why am I that bad?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I think it would have been cool if the first act of the game was working with the police captain, Yuri. And I thought that was so weird that like his voice actor's name is Yuri and he's constantly saying his own name.
Weird, right?
Isn't that odd?
Very odd.
But I thought the first act of the game would have made it a little stronger if you were working towards helping her bringing down the Kingpin.
Sure.
And then everything else goes to shit afterwards.
Got it.
Which is basically the plot of the game. So how did you feel about the character of Mary Jane in this story?
So I'm going to say this a lot, but until playing this, I didn't know that they were a couple.
Right.
So I had to sort of discern for myself that they had sort of a failed relationship in the past, I can't recall like how explicitly it's brought up.
I think it's explicit.
Yeah.
But in terms of her personality and character and her role in the story, what do you think?
Well, I mean, the points where you play as her, it's kind of a walking simulator.
Yeah.
And where I don't know how to put this the right way. In the beginning of the game, it's clear that like Peter Parker's kind of like this bumbling sort of nerdy, embarrassed sort of dude who I feel like is more into her than she's into him, right? Kind of, or something happened.
That's at least the way it's, and maybe that's a success, is that that's the way it seems to you.
Or like he wants to impress her or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So she kind of is a little bit more, I think to the game's credit, she's a little bit more involved in the plot than Mary Jane has been in the
Sure.
past.
Yeah.
I'm not as thrilled about the actual direction of her character. She's doing a story about an auction house, belongs to the Kingpin in the beginning, right? And that's how, I think the first time you play as her.
Aren't you sneaking around the auction house as the first segment?
Yes. And this gets raided by the masked men called the Inner Demons.
Yep.
Who Spider-Man shows up and he dispatches them. This is also when they introduce Aunt May, who is she in this version is working for a shelter for the unhoused. Or
is that the Feast Shelter?
The Feast Shelter, and her partner, I guess, the guy who's running it is Martin Lee.
Yep.
He's a Chinese American businessman. And Peter shows one of the demons masks to him. And he's like, "Oh, you know about this." Peter, you can't just ask anybody about these masks. But he shows one of the masks to Martin Lee, and he says, "These guys are bad news. I would stay away from them." Right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say my interpretation of this kind of segment of the story, and then you can go. Right?
Sure.
So Peter is working for the small tech startup run by Otto Octavius. They designed prosthetic limbs. I thought that was a cool take. Norman Osborn is the mayor in this version of Spider-Man, and he shuts them down like for safety reasons, but he really just wants to kind of steal Otto's research. And I like that they've had many different versions of their relationship, Osborn and Dr. Octavius. I thought it was very interesting the way this was portrayed. It almost like you just finished Breaking Bad, kind of like that, like kind of relationship. It fell apart, like they're originally, partners in science and research. And
you're talking about like the gray matter comparison?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's because they were buddies in college, and then Norman was much more successful. So this kind of like his Norman Osborn's shittiness is sort of contagious, and it sort of makes Dr. Octavius a worse person. Like it sets him down this path. I felt that this gradual transformation was very well paced compared to what I was expecting. I thought this was going to happen like he was going to go full octopus like in the very beginning.
And that's why I think perhaps my positive bias towards this game is pretty strong, because I watched this play out over a long period of time.
Right. And it's sort of a little bit of dramatic irony where, to me at least, where you see all of the signs of, hey, there's the jumpsuit he's gonna eventually, and then these are, and you actually he later on in the story breaks everybody out of prison, and he's like, I've been doing some security consulting for the prison, and it's kind of like setting up all these pieces. I thought this aspect of the story was very well handled in terms of his gradual transformation. It's a little weird to me though that Spider-Man is 8 years into his career, and he seems like a little naive about it. Like,
he's very naive about what they're funding, their startup, and working with this guy.
But it's like, and maybe it's just a blind spot because he sees the good in him.
Yeah,
because
maybe
that's a big aspect of Spider-Man is that. But in terms of the warning signs, I feel like something would have rattled the spider sense a little bit.
Yep,
that was maybe
Spidey senses didn't kick in. Sorry,
they didn't tingle. You have a couple early encounters with the Shocker here. And I thought it was a very funny line that Spider-Man delivers. Look, man, you have no personality, but your suit is awesome. And that's basically how I feel about the Shocker.
Yeah.
Like, every time I see him, he's kind of like a lower level Spider-Man villain. But I did think that he was in the 2002 movie tie-in game, and something I really liked about that boss battle versus this one. I'm sure it's clunky as shit nowadays, but the way they set it up, originally, it's a couple levels where you have to chase him down in the original game, and it winds up, the conclusion is pretty much like the armored spider in Demon Souls, where he's at one end of a subway tunnel and you're at the other, and you have to switch from tunnel to tunnel to avoid his big shocking thing. So I'm like, how have we gone backwards since that? Like, that was awesome, but whatever, you deal with him.
Would you have appreciated maybe a throwback and you do the same thing?
Anything, because I mean, like, it's not. It's kind of, we were talking about God of War Ragnarok recently. When we talked about that, we talked about the boss arenas and how flat they are. Yeah, and I thought that some of that, not necessarily to that extent, but some of that carried over into this one, where it's like, you're just kind of in a little octagon where you're
Yep.
fighting the guy. I wish there was like a little bit more
Environmental aspect.
yeah, or even, you know, Arkham City where you have the different the boss battles are very memorable. They're all very distinct.
Yep.
So a little more of that. Early on in this game, you also work with, I don't know if this name surprised you as it did me, but the Officer Jefferson Davis. He's the police officer that you work with in the beginning. He is killed at his award ceremony.
Yep.
And he is Miles Morales' father. I was like, why is this guy named Jefferson Davis? The president of the Confederate States of America? I was like, what?
That's really now. Remind me though, because you know you're more knowledgeable on this world than me. Is Jefferson Davis in the universe, like comic book animated series?
I looked this up. So that was his name, and everyone was really like not. I don't know what the right word is. Like maybe a little offended because he's an African American guy, and his name is
he has a Confederate namesake.
Yeah, and it's like what? And so they finally wound up changing it in the comics. The character is like, yeah, I changed my name. I don't know why my parents gave me that name, and I'm like, it really took me out of the moment. I was like,
strange.
wait, because there is a Miles Morales movie where he features. I totally forgot about this, and it's very good, but yeah, this is kind of where you introduce Miles at this this award ceremony. Martin Lee reveals himself to be a superpowered villain, and he tries to kill Norman Osborn for some reason. So what did you think about this turn for Martin Lee? What did you think about this?
This is a good one for me where I didn't really see this coming when you encounter, you know, Martin Lee in Feast, you know, or it's another thing too, where I think they did a good job with Martin Lee and Doc Ock of being kind of these very like soft-spoken fatherly characters to you.
Sure. Yeah.
And so of course, because I don't have the bias of knowing that they're bad from comic books or past media, they would come off to me as well written.
Well, so, and that's the great thing too. That's what I feel like they maybe should have concentrated on Mr. Negative, because I don't know shit about this guy. Like he's a very new, I think 2011 he was introduced, and I thought he was a very and it's also like for both of these characters, it's even more heartbreaking considering that Peter Parker, you know, he lost Uncle Ben.
Yeah,
he's looking for that father figure in his life, and they keep letting him down. You know?
Right.
And that's a pretty it's a bummer. So this is kind of like the end of Act 1, and Norman hires the Silver Sable and her company to help out the police force. Do you have any opinions about Silver Sable?
Not in particular, no. Do you?
She's a known character from the comics, but I thought she was very nothing in this game.
Yeah, that's. Like, I mean, maybe I gave you the right answer.
Just
not really.
Didn't really connect with me. So Martin attempts to steal the Devil's Breath, which is it's a deadly virus. It's like a lab leak. It was intended to treat or cure a disease of some kind. They find out. Mary Jane and Spider-Man thwart him in his attempts, and he is also sent to super jail. Right. Dr. Octavius reveals that he has a completely unrelated neurodegenerative disease. And finally becomes Dr. Octopus.
Yep.
Because essentially he is going to lose the function in his body, his limbs, and these prosthetic arms
that you've been working on. And
yeah, and it's pretty like it's the irony is very strong where he's like, isn't it amazing? And it's like they look very evil.
Well, no, I think this was pretty affecting for me, where you kind of get the weirdo moment that I was not expecting, where, you know, because Doc Ock is kind of talking to Spider-Man as if like he's excited about this and it's normal. Right. Oh, this is going to be great. And Peter's like, yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah. No, that was pretty, I mean, when it came to the execution, I thought it was pretty well done, but, yeah, he stages, a mass breakout of Rikers, and he frees 5 of Spider-Man's nemesis from super jail, forming, the Sinister Six, and unleashing, the Devil's Breath on the crowd in Times Square. And I think this is the point where Aunt May starts coughing up blood. You know you're in trouble.
Yep.
So I have to air another grievance with
Sure.
you here. So this is one of the first things that they showed from the game. I try not to watch trailers,
Me
but
too.
it was like the first Spider-Man thing in so long, and I'm like, fuck it, let's see how they're doing. This was like, I think, one of the first trailers they had. I naively assumed that this was what the entire story was going to be about. Example, similar to Arkham Asylum, you have a mass breakout, and the villains, they each kind of have a boss role, like a Metal Gear boss team. That's how I thought this was going to play out. Imagine if you will, this is like my ideal version of this game. They are each have like a different part of the city that they are located in or in control of. Some side quests associated with them instead of whatever they had you doing. Like, let's example, Electro is one of the villains. He's messing with New York's power grid. We have to get the power back on in this part of the city, whatever. Example, Vulture is flying around the tallest skyscrapers in the city, and you have to fight him on really tenuous footing. And like that other game I was talking about, you do that in that game where he is up in a clock tower, and you have to climb the entire clock tower to reach him, and then you wind up fighting him around the Chrysler building. And it's like it's like a set piece, you know?
Do you feel like these bosses and set pieces could have been more intertwined? Is that what you're driving at?
Yes, and expanded upon, because
Sure.
I feel like when it comes to a video game, I feel like there is not a lot of developers, when they are handed an IP like this, really take full advantage of how much more time you have to work with, and how, like, there are like the Taskmaster I mentioned, and the character Tombstone. These guys are like minor Spider-Man villains. Electro, Vulture, Rhino, all those guys. Those are like the main dudes. I wish like big chunks of the game had been devoted to them.
Yeah.
Maybe you can approach them in any order. You know what I mean?
Oh, something like that.
Something like that. I never thought I'd find myself arguing on behalf of a sewer level.
Uh-huh.
But the Lizard is another Spider-Man villain. But there's I don't really like the movie that much, but the movie that he's in, the Lizard, Spider-Man has to go down into the sewer and like track him down using his webs and stuff, hearing like the vibrations, something like that, where you're like going to a place and looking. So you
wanted like a boss specific segment or portion of the game or zone that you could tackle in any order,
right? Stuff like that, where they all get at the very beginning, and then the city's in rough shape. You got to put it back together.
Interesting.
Right? What winds up happening here, they do give you a choice, a binary choice at one point. Do you want to go after Electro or Rhino first? Something like that, more on a macro scale. You know what I mean? The Sinister Six are a classic like comic thing. Like, all these guys are gonna team up and take out Spider-Man once and for all, right? So they do it right at the beginning here of his trilogy. I'm assuming this is going to be a trilogy, right?
Sure.
Their boss fights I thought were very easy.
Yeah.
A lot of quick time events.
Yep.
You just kind of like all right, we got Vulture, we got there. You do them two at once.
I was about to say, one of the boss battles is two at once. You're just kind of slinging around the sky, and you get was that. Who were the two at once?
I want to say Vulture and Electro.
I think you're right.
And Rhino was his own thing.
Yep.
And Scorpion is another thing.
Yep.
This is another weird thing about this, where Scorpion, when all the guys break out, Scorpion hits you with his tail, and it's leaking like poison. And I'm like, oh shit, Spider-Man's been poisoned, and nothing happens.
Yep, nothing comes of it.
He does it again, and this is when Spider-Man starts hallucinating. I'm like, why didn't that do anything the first time, and now it's happening now?
Oversight?
I don't know. Different poison, whatever. But I thought that this was kind of a stab at a scarecrow scene, where the city is covered in poison and everything, and there's like big scorpion tails coming out, and I'm like, what are we saying here?
Right.
It doesn't.
Is this just a visual set piece?
That's
that's exactly.
Ultimately it's just aesthetic. I think so. The main theme of this narrative is sort of like morality and grappling with your inner demons, which is what the bad guys are called, and your negative side. Right. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think the movie Spider-Man 3 did it better.
Wow. That's surprising.
It's a terrible thing to say, but in terms of this version of Spider-Man, to me, had no genuine inner conflict,
Right.
at least until the end, in terms of like, you know, the choices Spider-Man has presented with in the movies, the classic comic era, you know, like there's genuine, like, I want to be, you know, Spider-Man is my responsibility, but it's fucking up my personal life.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you kind of get a choice like that at the end that you don't make. But in terms of how it plays into the overall plot, I didn't feel like this Spider-Man was dealing with that kind of struggle.
Right. It's almost the choices were very obvious. Go stop thing. Bad guy did something very bad.
Right. And there's like some really absurd questions where Spider-Man is grappling with whether Dr. Octavius's soul can be saved after he maybe initiated a global pandemic.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is already killing thousands of people. And the same goes for Martin Lee, who has committed like similarly awful crimes. And then there's like this absurd like phone call where he's like, "Hey, MJ, when would you say it's okay to give up on a friend?" Fucking now, when he's Dr. Octopus.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just like, there is some level of naivete to Spider-Man where he really wants to
see the good in everything.
Yeah, the latest movie is him trying to undo all the damage that's been done to his worst supervillains, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like, in terms of the emotional like connection with Spider-Man right now, it's like it went too far for me.
Sure.
Where I'm like, dude, we got to take him down. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but
Yeah.
that's it. There's a lot of like weird lines and moments in this part of the game where Spider-Man you find his Dr. Octopus's lair, and you're led towards a briefcase because you think it's the devil's breath, and it's like it opens up and it's not there. I'm like, it's a bomb. You better get out of there. And guess what it is?
Yeah,
it's a fucking bomb. So I was like, why am I smarter than he has the spider sense?
Right.
Why am I picking up on this before he is?
Ludonarrative dissonance.
Exactly. Mary Jane discovers that the devil's breath was intended as a cure for Norman Osborn's son Harry, whose condition he has inherited from his deceased mother. There's a part where I mentioned earlier, you sneak around his apartment. You see a little, I like that they didn't beat you over the head with this, that there's some hints that he's going to become the Green Goblin later. There's like the masks and stuff. And when you open up his computer, you see the little glider and pumpkin bomb and all that stuff. It's like, it's perfectly like
placed in there.
Like it's not too heavy handed. You wind up having to jump off in a cutscene to escape the Silver Sable, or everyone's favorite character. In this moment, a radioactive spider crawls its way onto Mary Jane's clothes and makes it all the way back to Feast, where it bites Miles on the hand.
Yep.
So eventually that's how he's going to become his own Spider-Man. So Silver Sable, she learns to trust Spider-Man here. Very forced, rushed moment because the game is running out of track. The game starts forcing you to wear the suit I hate in cutscenes at all times. And Peter also puts together a new suit in a cutscene without your help. I thought like this, it just felt so like, and there you go.
And here it is.
If you integrated maybe those BioShock puzzle moments while he's putting together his new suit, like one last time,
right?
Maybe the toughest puzzle of all is making something that it's like the anti-Dr. Octopus suit or whatever, right? Final boss battle with Dr. Octopus on the roof. It killed me once. It was reasonably challenging, but I don't know. It was like, well, let's
just kind of get all this done here.
Game's over, right? So I'm gonna kind of narrate the ending of the game here. I want to hear your thoughts on it right afterwards. Spider-Man eventually he has to make the difficult choice to sacrifice Aunt May. I did not feel as strong of a connection as previous iterations of this character. I feel like they were definitely going for like a gut punch, like shock moment more than anything else. I just didn't feel like earned to me in respect to everything else that was going on. It was just like she wasn't real. She was there the whole time, but it didn't feel like, I don't know, like I got really upset and scared when Link's grandmother got sick in Wind Waker. You know what I mean? I didn't feel that level of connection.
Do you feel like it's one of these, like he doesn't have much family and he's going to let this person go? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's like, it doesn't, even right afterwards or at the beginning of the next game, it doesn't seem like it's affected him all that much.
No.
Like he's back to, I can't believe she's gone, but gotta keep going, gotta protect the city. Like,
there's
there's
pizza time.
pizza time.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that beleaguers all these PS4 games is they don't shut the fuck up ever. If someone's talking to you constantly, you can't deal with you can't feel sadness or failure at all because someone is constantly talking, and you really need to have those moments where you just sit in it. You need to sit in the moment and just be like, wow, fuck.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And all the games
everything is spoken to you.
Yes, very on the nose. Even the ending where he gets back together with Mary Jane felt unearned to me because at the beginning they're already on like pretty good terms, even though they broke up. It would have to be like you would have to start out with them being kind of awkward and estranged, and then at the end they're they finally got back together. They worked through their problem, right? I felt like Miles revealing he had spider powers in the post credits that should have been integrated into the story. And maybe like when Peter gets knocked out at the Osborn event, you take over as Miles Morales for a little bit, just kind of shuffle the story around. Kind of like
when you take over as Catwoman and Batman.
Right, exactly. And so there is also a post credits where Harry Osborn is revealed to be alive in a giant aquarium, and he's being kept alive by the Venom symbiote thing, right? Which is not unprecedented. Maybe people are purists, because Venom is traditionally like an alien, but there is a version where Venom is a synthetic thing meant to cure cancer in one of the previous incarnations. So it's like, all right, well, that's I wasn't expecting that. Like maybe it'll lead to something interesting. And I got a little bit into this, but didn't get very far. There's a DLC called The City That Never Sleeps, a series of expansions involving Spider-Man teaming up with his it's kind of like a Catwoman ripoff called Black Cat, and as well as our favorite character Silver Sable, to take down the villain known as Hammerhead, who is another very minor Spider-Man character. And I watched the cutscene on YouTube, absolutely absurd finale involving where you have to pin Hammerhead down with your spider webs, and Silver Sable is flying a jet, and she shoots a laser into his metal forehead to try and melt it down. I'm like, what are we doing
here? What is happening?
Except like it's just
is it too on the nose if I say Jump the Shark if his name's Hammerhead?
Yeah, his Hammerhead. Yes, of course. So that's the end of the game. I'm going with a B- on this one. It's clear they tried. For me, there was a lot of disappointing stuff in this game. You want to say your final thoughts?
Sure, yeah. I have a positive bias because every reveal is new to me. Mm-hmm. Every character that turns evil, I had no idea this was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think the character buildup of, I guess, Peter Parker's relationship with Dr. Ock, and the way Dr. Ock slowly became more deranged, and you realize he's working on prosthetics for himself.
Right.
To me, that was very effective.
Yeah.
Especially, I need to stress to the audience, me knowing nothing, like that is very effective to me. Mm-hmm. I think with respect to Feast and and Mr. Negative, thought that was fine. I think the Mr. Negative character is a little bit too unrealistic, especially with what he looks like as a villain. It's very odd.
Like photo negative.
Exactly. It's very strange.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of even in the movies, like the first two movies, the guys are fairly believable villains. Yeah. Green Goblin, he just gets high on the gas, and Dr. Octopus has prosthetic arms. Yeah. And then in the third movie, they introduced the Sandman and Venom. I'm like, this is like so far removed from reality.
It's just a little bit too far removed for me.
Right.
Because I like the personal connection between Spider-Man and Doc Ock. I gave this game a B, and if it's on a good day, B+, but that might be generous.
Okay.
I think B is fine.
Okay. Well, all right.
You want to talk about Miles Morales?
Let's jump in here.
So I actually had the pleasure of finishing this yesterday. So I'm very fresh.
You're very fresh. I finished it not that long, maybe a week ago.
And like I said at the beginning of this segment, I have no idea who this kid is. My first experience with him is this. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, so you should catch the movie at some point because it's very it's beyond like a Spider-Man movie. The animation is very cutting edge.
Yeah. Okay.
Where they do a cool thing where the majority of the movie is at a lower frame rate.
Oh.
And then when he finally becomes Spider-Man, he is a full like normal frame rate. So it looks very unique, very cutting edge, kind of a cool integrating all the different versions of Spider-Man and all that stuff. So this game came out in 2020. What, do you got something to say?
Yeah, and it's
Wise
fine.
guy?
And this game's fine.
It's fine. Developed by Insomniac Studios as well, published also by SIE. Miles Morales must unmask a conspiracy at the heart of the Roxxon Oil Corporation and a high-tech insurgent group known as the Underground without the help of Spider-Man Sr. So he's it's a vacation episode.
Yeah. So what's really funny is you stated this to me. Hey, this is the Christmas game, right, or something like
yes.
that. And so right off the bat here, I think Miles Morales, what I struggled with most in ingesting this game, it feels like it's caught between being a game and being DLC.
Yeah.
And why don't you start from here? I mean, this game is very brief. I think the main story wraps up in 10 missions or so. It's
right.
very short.
Yeah. So it's not quite DLC and it's not quite a sequel. But I did feel like it was closer to like an ODST than its sister Christmas game, which is Arkham Origins. A little bit, and it's kind of a pet peeve. But I feel like a lot of when we do a Christmas episode in anything, I feel like Christmas is more of like the centerpiece, whereas in this one, it's just something that happens to be Christmas.
Something that I actually thought was poor about this game right off the bat. It's kind of a nitpick, but you aren't told it's Christmas until you like walk in the door for Christmas dinner. Like, I'm serious. Like, you and my brother kept joking how it's a Christmas game, and I said, but they haven't said that. What are you talking about?
Okay.
It's just odd. Like, it's a small critique. It's just your mom. The beginning of the game, your mom's asking you to get groceries, but I'm like, oh, is this just like a? She asking you to get groceries for Christmas? Who cares?
Right.
Like, I don't care.
Whatever.
But whatever. It's weird.
So another kind of funny point is that Spider-Man is gone for most of this game. Peter Parker is on some kind of trip with Mary Jane
in Europe.
And it's kind of funny, like, don't you think that there would be some people who put together that Spider-Man and Peter Parker were gone for the same amount of time?
No. Yeah, I guess the people of New York cannot put this together.
Oh, they don't give a shit.
No.
Spider-Man, there's always a Spider-Man.
There's a fucking new Spider-Man every week.
Every week. Yeah, so in terms of the length, I wanted to, before we get too far, how do you feel about this game's price point and how we attribute value based on playtime?
Did it come out at 50 or 40?
50?
It was one of those.
I think maybe higher on new gen.
So I played Spider-Man on PS4. I played Miles Morales on PS5.
Mm-hmm.
So this is tricky where this game I think was 6 or 7 hours ish. Yeah. And it's a hard. Well, here's the problem, man. I just feel like if I found this game more satisfying, I might give it a small pass at price point. But I do feel it's too expensive. I lean on that side.
Well, it's weird because it's kind of a double-edged sword for me where I don't feel like necessarily we should price games based on runtime.
Because
I feel like it's become this awful trend where every game has to be 150 hours now to be
justify
worth it.
The price.
Like, it reminds me of, I was Christmas shopping earlier. Very pertinent comparison here. I was in FYE. I saw a deluxe CD copy of Metallica's album Reload, and it said 78 minutes of music. And I'm like, it sure is, but not many of them are good.
Yep,
it's
exactly.
Very, like, I mean, I'm not being a troll here. It's not considered to be one of their better albums. And it's like, you definitely have a lot here, but how much of it is good?
Exactly.
So I don't necessarily judge it based on that, but I feel like it's kind of either the feast or the famine when it comes to games.
Yeah. Well, it's become an argument in the industry, right? Or at least among fans. Like, oh, should a 6-hour game be $70?
I thought of the previous game, I don't think it used its time wisely, but in terms of how long it took, I thought it was the perfect length.
Yeah, of course.
Like
sure.
20
to
hours.
30.
That's fine. For $60, that's fine.
Yeah.
So, moving on. How did this game look and perform for you?
So this could just be me. I thought this game sounded like shit.
Sounded bad?
It sounds like shit. It's really weird. So here's what I want you guys to do, if you care. When you start Miles Morales, you ever seen that like PlayStation advertisement where if a game is a Sony exclusive, they show you other Sony exclusives before the game starts?
Dude, don't get me started on that like fucking
montage.
Yeah, but like a lot of companies are doing it right now, like the Marvel and Star Wars, and it's like the brand, and it's like, if you see that, that's quality.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that.
Well, what really kind of put me off is that advertisement sounded way better than than the main menu of Miles Morales. I'm like, this could just, I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole of mixing work, but this game sounds very suffocated, and it's odd.
Compressed.
To me, it sounds like either a lot of high frequency content is rolled off, and the game almost has a very like subby sort of, I don't want to use the term hip hoppy, but do
you think that was on purpose?
I don't know, but it's odd. It perhaps wouldn't have jumped out to me if the advertisement didn't sound better.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when it comes to the sound design of the game, it's totally fine. I just felt like for some reason this game does not sound very good to me, and it feels very odd.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I did.
Oh my God! Wait, before you move on.
Yeah.
I did not like at all that they changed what Spider-Man looks like. Not Miles Morales. I mean, Peter Parker.
Right.
Like I think
they did that for the
PS5 release, right?
As well.
It's so weird. Well, if you think about it, I played Spider-Man on PS4, and then in Miles Morales, Peter Parker returns briefly. Yeah. I'm like, why does he look different?
But he also, so I played this on PS4, and he also looks different.
Oh God.
In that version.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with this weird reskin, so he looks more like Tom Holland, right? Is that why they did this?
I guess. I mean, at least his hair looks better.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
No, yeah, I encountered some glitches and bugs on the PS4 version. Nothing a reload couldn't fix, but occasionally, like there's a part where Miles is walking around a science museum and he's just like bugging out. Like,
great! I actually experienced no bugs at all.
That's good. Maybe
almost
PS5
none.
was a little cleaner. Mm-hmm. In terms of the sound you were talking about, I thought the soundtrack had a little bit more going on.
Look, I should say this. I don't think the game sounded very good, but I thought it sounded a little more hip and interesting.
Yeah.
Like, also, there are some cute moments where it's a little bit of a diegetic thing where Miles Morales is dancing around to the theme.
Oh, okay.
It happens like either in the subway or in certain moments.
Yeah,
that's
dance
cool.
To it. And you know what it reminded me of? Because it's a little bit more, you got some interesting beats going on.
Yeah.
And it reminded me a lot of how every game's soundtrack had that in like the 90s and early 2000s because everybody wanted to be hip.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is kind of taking me back to like Tony Hawk or some bullshit.
Yep, it's pretty cool.
Like one of those. What did you think about Miles' voice acting?
It's not great. So I don't hate it.
Yeah.
He sounds a little bit too, I don't like to use the word whiny, but it's a little bit too like everything is so surprising. And like, I can't believe this is happening.
Right.
It's odd.
Well, it's clearly, I think it's bizarre. Well, because so Peter Parker is in his 20s in this canon, and the guy who's voicing him is in his 40s.
Yeah.
So some people are preternaturally gifted to make their voice sound, like younger, right?
Yeah.
But this is a guy in, I believe, his 20s who is voicing a teenager.
Yeah.
And he seems like he's trying to sort of uncrack the voice a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a superficial complaint, but it's like,
I don't think it's offensively bad.
No.
I just think it's
It's okay. I did like about, in his, the way you were talking about his dancing around, I thought his animations are a little bit more awkward and scrappy and befitting of Spider-Man because he's sort of like the underdog.
Yeah.
I like when he's swinging around, he's kind of just flailing a little bit.
Yep.
I like that. I think
I do too.
that's more Spider-Man-y. And something I really liked is the look of New York City in this game, even compared to the first one. I think the snow adds a lot to the aesthetic. It looks a lot more authentic about what New York City looks like. It's like kind of dirty.
Yep.
Like the snow is dirty. And the cotton candy kind of sunset thing is very beautiful. It got me actually to play around with photo mode a little bit because I was like, wow, this looks fucking great. So I liked that a lot.
And as soon as I got the Santa hat and scarf, I wore it the whole game.
Yeah, you got it.
Of course.
So Miles, he pretty much, I think the suits where he doesn't have as long of a history as Peter Parker in the comics. You get some good suit variety. He has some unique abilities, including the Venom punch or whatever, and full invisibility. So what did you think about the new things, his new abilities and stuff? And how much did you use them?
So a lot. So I would say the combat is almost the same as the previous game, but it's with this introduction of, like, they call them Venom powers, but I mean, he has nothing to do with Venom.
That's
villain,
what
right?
confused me.
I thought I was being naive. I'm like, wait, is Miles Morales Venom? Is this another Greg doesn't know about superheroes moment?
I was confused.
So I don't know why they called it this, because to me it was just Electro Punch.
Right.
That's what it played like anyway. And yeah, I mean, I almost unlocked every skill and ability, and I actually thought it was pretty well thought out. How even though the game is very short, there's definitely enough going on with these sort of electric abilities and how they affect combat. There's enough happening for it to be fleshed out.
Well, so I didn't really care about them that much. They just kind of made your moves hit harder.
Yep.
But in terms of, this is a carryover from the movie where he has something unique about it, is that he has that camouflage.
Yeah.
And I thought this made the stealth so much more enjoyable.
Yes.
Because it was so much more of a binary, I can be seen, I can't be seen.
I had only one issue with the invisibility. If you don't use all of your meter, it still takes just as long to recover.
Oh,
like if you kill stealth halfway through, it still goes to 0.
Yeah, that's
kind of odd.
Yeah, that's weird. And so you know, in terms of the stripped down nature of the game, do you feel like I thought the skill tree was maybe could have been handled better? What do you think?
I actually thought it was fine.
Okay.
I kind of knew what I was getting into, that it was a short game.
Yeah.
I actually get a little bit of a sigh of relief when the skill trees are so short.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, good. I'm not going to have to micromanage for 20 hours.
I just thought that, like, what you actually got was not very useful.
Okay.
Out of the skill tree at any rate. I had no complaints about its size. Did you pick up on any other quality of life improvements, great or small?
Yeah, so I'm very positive on how the collectibles and the open world tropes you did not have to do a lot of them to get all the skills.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Like, something that I did not like about Spider-Man or Miles Morales, there are too many silly things on the map to do. There are too many chores, and I didn't do like any of them. I said, oh my God.
The checklist
No,
stuff.
thanks.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I felt as though I found myself making fewer mistakes in combat. So maybe I think, I talked about the previous one. I don't think this was necessarily as tight as I didn't like when you hit somebody in Batman, it felt like an impact to me. And this one, I just felt like maybe I'm not sure what it was, but it felt maybe I had just spent enough time with it and I was more comfortable with it. And the level design also integrated the interiors of buildings better.
Yes.
You got to go in and out of, they would break and stuff. I like that also in this one, there are enemies who can scale rooftops when they're searching for you. So because it can be pretty like just general like predatory if you just pick off guys one by one, which is even easier now that you can go into stealth mode.
Yep.
But now you have some enemies who can scale roofs, which is a welcome change. And as far as the side quests went, I felt like they were not quite as fleshed out as I would have liked them to be, but they're more charming and meaningful thanks to you get the Spider-Man app that his friend creates. Yep. And it's kind of becomes like a Zendesk feed for Spider-Man. And so there is like a mission involving the Vulture, and there is a bodega cat named Spider-Man that you have to rescue.
That was very cute. I did that.
Gets, in your backpack.
Yep.
It might sound ridiculous, but I did meet in real life. I met a bodega cat named Thanksgiving.
Great.
So there's some wild names out there. But yeah, that's not a lot they added. But I found it like tiny little bit of polish was added in that respect.
Sure.
Getting the story here?
We might as well, because the gameplay is very similar.
Yeah. Okay. So in the beginning, the two Spider-Men, they apprehend the Rhino, an initial clash with that group, the Underground, at the Roxxon Oil Company. Miles returns to his abuela's house for Christmas with his mother. Rio, who's a local city candidate, is up for election. His best friend Genki, who we've been talking about, and his former friend, who he's kind of lost touch with, named Finn. Right. So they have a brief kind of catch up at Christmas dinner, kind of get to know the family a little bit. And then the next day, Miles answers an app request from his estranged Uncle Aaron, who is working for the train I'm not sure if
the New York City subway,
right? And he does this little task for him. It was a cool little puzzle thing involving the trains. Yep. And his uncle figures out his identity like pretty much instantly. He's like, "I got you pegged," right? And so there is a segment where the underground attacks his mom's campaign rally.
Yep.
And Miles pursues them. He goes after their leader, who is it's a very reinvented version of it's like a C tier Spider-Man villain called the Tinkerer. It's this balding old man who makes stuff for other villains.
Yep.
And they've completely reinvented it into this incredibly acrobatic, superpowered character,
underground anarchist sort of thing,
right? And realize it is none other than his friend Finn.
Yeah,
right?
Kind of his love interest too, right? Hinted at,
sorta, yeah. So I have an interesting question for you here. What did you think of this reveal? Because as soon as they showed a feminine profile for this character, I was like, okay, it's his friend, right? Mm-hmm. And since it was really obvious, I can't decide whether or not I like that they showed it right away.
Dude, I don't know. I felt the same way.
Right?
So, like, reiterating what I've said throughout the episode, of course, because I'm coming in here with very little knowledge on this universe, I was like, oh, is the Tinkerer Finn in the comic books? I don't know. Like, I don't fucking know.
No.
So I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was too obvious, but maybe it was. I don't know. Like, I feel like I kind of scratched my head. It did. You know what? It did not offend me.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine. So the underground is warning the citizens of Harlem that Roxxon's latest energy product, new form, is unsafe or unstable. Pretty stock plot, used pretty frequently. It was recently as Glass Onion, is the same thing, the Knives Out sequel. But I found it slightly more compelling. It's nice to see like a down and out Spider-Man. He's on his own. He's just trying to save the neighborhood, right? I found that a little bit more compelling.
Well, you know what? I think maybe the reveal of Finn being the Tinkerer it plays a little bit better because Miles Morales has not told her that he's Spider-Man.
Right.
Where like with Peter Parker and Jane and Spider-Man it's a little more intertwined.
Yeah.
But I feel like with Miles Morales being Spider-Man and Finn being the Tinkerer, I forget, does Genki bring it up or something like, well, have you told her what you do?
Right.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting little kind of asymmetrical advantage there, right? So she's leading this movement to avenge the death of her brother, Rick, who was murdered by the CEO of Roxxon, Simon Krieger.
Yep.
So when you're infiltrating their facility, you receive aid from his uncle Aaron, who reveals that he is actually the character, the Prowler. Okay, so this would have been totally new to you. The Prowler is actually one of my favorite Spider-Man characters. I felt that they handled his actual character pretty well. Wasn't a huge fan of the way he looked. It was very like Power Rangers-y.
It did look like that,
And traditionally he's kind of like, he's in the Miles Morales movie, and he looks great. It's very, very stylized, very cool. I like the presence of his character. I thought he was a welcome kind of third dimension to the plot.
And I didn't expect that his estranged uncle is a supervillain. That's why his mom is like, well, yeah, we don't hang out with this guy anymore.
Yeah, he's kind of like a middle, like sometimes good, sometimes bad kind of guy. You know? And there is a subplot where you find out that Miles and Aaron used to work on beats together, and you know what this is reminding me of?
No, what is it reminding you of?
Well, it's an uncle and a nephew, and they're working on beats.
Who's that duo?
LMFAO.
That's right. So yeah, that's the Easter egg here, where they are actually LMFAO.
That's the origin story.
No, as soon as I saw that side quest pop up, I said, "Fuck this! We're going to the end game. I'm not doing this shit."
Don't give me anything else.
It was just one of these like. What's your uncle's name? Is it Aaron? Aaron's like, yeah, I used to work on beats with your dad, but we never finished the mixtape.
No, that himself.
Right. And so it was something like one of the side quests is you can go off and find samples for the mixtape. Right. I said, I'm all set. I'm done.
This is like if you were a little kid who had a million hours of the day, might entertain you for a little bit.
I'm all set.
As a grown man, I'm good. Miles briefly works together with Finn here to try and take down Roxxon, but it goes south when she attempts to kill the Rhino in cold blood. After you have a boss fight, he's got a bunch of upgrades and bullshit, right? Very kind of I don't know how you felt about this moment. I felt like it was very out of nowhere, where Miles' mother Rio discovers his true identity. This point was like, oh, well, I guess she knows too.
Wait, you mean when Miles' mother discovers that Miles is Spider-Man?
Right. Yeah.
I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
I didn't mind this, where I think Spider-Man is beat up, and then he kind of calls for Genki to help him.
Yeah.
And Genki brings him back home, and Mom walks in.
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
Okay.
It would be worse if she didn't.
Okay. All right.
That's at least
I just
how
felt
I
like
feel.
it should have maybe felt like a bigger deal or something. I don't know. It's like
It was adequate to me.
Yeah,
it was okay.
The
The game is also so brief. So
It's true, yeah. So Miles is captured by the Prowler, and this was actually the most emotionally invested I was in the whole narrative.
Yeah.
The fighting him,
Yeah.
because it's like it's very like nobody really wants to hurt the other, but like they're at a emotional impasse, I guess, because
Yeah.
he doesn't want Miles to get hurt, going after these people, and you hand his ass to him. It's
Yeah.
that's the way it goes. Miles, basically the whole crux of the finale is that the Tinkerer is going to blow up this new form energy source, but she doesn't realize how destructive it's going to be when it blows. So Miles, because he has this bioelectricity thing going on, he absorbs the energy of this reactor before it goes critical, and it is obviously going to kill him. So the Tinkerer carries him into the upper atmosphere to safely release the energy before it kills him, sacrificing herself in the process. So a couple points here. Number one, this is the exact plot of the season finale of Heroes, the first season finale.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Where a character is going to explode and they get carried off into the upper atmosphere and they detonate. Just pointing it out there. Number two, I actually like the way it looked.
Yeah.
Where she is carrying like the limp Spider-Man up into the atmosphere. It's almost like a very like biblical kind of sacrifice moment, and I thought it looked good. But in terms of, I gotta ask you here, did you find the Tinkerer to be a compelling villain?
I mean, not really, but
Yeah.
this whole game isn't very compelling because it is so truncated and brief.
Right.
I think I said this in the beginning. Is the whole game 10 main story mission, 10 or 12?
Yeah.
It's very short.
Very short.
And also, I understood the plot, but it is so stock and standard, I don't care.
Yeah.
Oh, so there's a rich guy who wants to make money off essentially an energy resource. Oh, there is girl who's running resistance movement. Finn doesn't like that. There's an intertwined plot of that energy source killed her brother, so now she's mad.
Right.
Oh, she's going to unreasonably detonate it. Oh, we have to stop. I'm like, like I get it.
Playing the hits.
It's fine. Yeah, exactly. It was fine. The final boss battle with her is fine. Like this whole game is like fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I could be either more charming or descriptive about any of this. It's fine.
So my thoughts here. I have no problem with reinventing a sort of C-tier Spider-Man villain, especially if it kind of pads out Miles Morales' rogues gallery a little bit, gives him his own set of enemies or whatever. But I feel like her character design, similar to the Prowler, it reminded me like too much of like Power Rangers or Destiny, or this is an odd pull, but the scientists in Far Cry Blood Dragon.
Okay,
like the very nondescript sci-fi,
too
armor,
science fictiony.
Like, I don't know. And I think that if Miles is going to be off on his own for the first time, I feel like he should. I think he was worthy of like a more established or powerful nemesis. Like they haven't really done a lot with a lot of Spider-Man's rogues gallery yet. I think any one of them.
Do you know what's funny? Now that you bring that up, that's funny about this guy. I didn't realize the main villain is just like his love interest, and she's not really that big of a villain at all. It's really
compared
odd.
to Rhino, even
right,
very low level. But in terms, I just felt like
that made this game feel like DLC to me.
It felt like small potatoes.
Yes,
that
yes,
he didn't have to go toe to toe with Mysterio or Electro or whatever. But okay, so despite the limited scope, I do like this game. I just didn't.
It feels too limited.
Not enough to chew on. It was very much. I think it was to So let's get a game out. Short turnaround time. I did find myself marginally encouraged by how much they already iterated and improved on some things. The way that the environments work and the combat and stuff like that. A little bit more. I felt like a little bit more panache in this one when it came to style. I feel like both these games. I've said it before, among countless others. They really you need to have a couple more quiet moments where you sort of soak in the emotional tone of the moment,
right?
Where you let trust your audience's emotional intelligence, including kids, because I loved those first two Spider-Man movies when I was a kid.
Right.
I think kids would get it if it's a moment supposed to be sad. Let them be sad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of it. I mean, for this game, what would you grade this game?
That's tricky. It's funny. This game I actually thought was a little bit more charming than Spider-Man, but it's just too truncated and odd. I just feel like I never say this where I'm like, I wish they fleshed this out into an actual game.
Yep.
I just don't understand why they didn't. I think I have to say B-, right? There's not enough here.
I agree.
I think C+ might be too harsh, but if you found me in a bad mood, maybe.
Right. No, I think it's definitely B-. It's same. It's just same grade as the previous one, just for different reasons.
Different problems.
You know what I mean? And we just apparently, I think, very recently they've talked about how Spider-Man 2, the official sequel, is coming out next fall.
Yeah.
To 2023. The next game is going to include Venom, one of Spider-Man's principal antagonists. As well as Kraven the Hunter, who is a very he hasn't been represented in movies or anything that much. As well as you have the Green Goblin we already mentioned. And in a post-credits scene, you see Dr. Kurt Connors, who's the one-armed guy who eventually becomes the Lizard. Yep. So how do you hope that they juggle these characters moving forward in terms of, we talked a lot about how I didn't feel that the villains were given ample screen time in the previous game. Yeah. How do you feel like they're going to juggle them? Do you think it's going to be closer to what I want or not? And is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, that's difficult. I almost wish like maybe Miles and Spider-Man would share the next game.
I think they are.
Okay, that's good. Because I know so little about these villains anyway, my expectations are nothing for that. I really don't know. They could hand me whatever they wanted and I will play it as it is.
Yeah.
I just think, I don't understand why Miles was so undercooked. I don't understand why it came out. They could have just waited or made a real game out of it.
It's weird. I wish Spider-Man 2 was just Miles Morales.
That's what I mean. Why didn't they do that? I don't know.
But I mean, so also another thing I want to talk about is that we've had the city like reskinned, and like, are we gonna do it again?
Oh,
like,
do you want them to go somewhere else?
I would love it if because in terms of, I don't necessarily want to see like Boston and Spider-Man, but like, in terms of, I thought it would be really cool if like they went to the Black Panther place, Wakanda, because that's a very unique location. Yeah. Maybe hang out with him a little bit. Anything that's just kind of, I don't know. I feel like because this isn't the first time New York has been portrayed in a Spider-Man game either.
Well, it's in every superhero game.
I know. So that's something that I hope surprises me in terms of the locales. Yeah. They revealed that the actor Tony Todd will be voicing Venom. He's the Candyman. He's very threatening voice actor. I thought, because I haven't, like, the first time Venom showed up was the Spider-Man 3 movie. Very weak portrayal, Topher Grace. Yeah. The Tom Hardy one is like a little bit better, but in terms of
the movie's not very good.
The movie's not good. Venom versus Carnage is fun, but the first one is bad. But in terms of like, I really hope, that's kind of what I was hoping for all of this, is like, give me like some definitive shit. You know, like, this is the definitive, like, voiced, animated, I want to, like, Venom's the big deal. I want to, like, I'm sure you've heard rumors and stories and legends about Venom, but you actually got to play as him in one of the previous games. Okay. And that might be cool to surprise me, do something. Who knows?
That. Play as a villain a little bit, turn it on its head.
Anything to shake it up.
You have anything else to wrap the Spider-Man talk?
No, I mean, so basically, I
feel like you're a little bit let down by these, more than I thought you would be.
A little bit, and I but like I said, the Miles Morales, for what it was very short, but there was just enough improvement to make me a little bit optimistic about the next one.
Yep. I think for me, there's too much open world collectibles in these games. This game, I think I said this to you in a private chat. These games are just charming enough and cute enough where they survive. Well,
you know what else? You get around a lot faster in most open world games.
So I think the charm sort of gives them a little bit of a pass over all the generic shit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's tough to say what I expect. But I appreciate everybody listening.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to do it for this episode of Goddamn GameCube.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time.